Senator, when you hear from constituents these days, I know there's a wide variety of concerns, comments, thank yous. What's the tenor of the feedback these days from constituents when they reach out to your office?
It depends on whether they've been directly impacted by DOGE, whether or not they've had family impacted by DOGE. But it starts out with, look, we know the executive branch, we know government's got to get reduced, we know that. And then after that they'll say, but do you know that something over here has been broken, or there's a website that got shut down? And what we've tried to do, at least when they contact our office, is number one, find out whether or not they simply want to tell us that they're mad at the president, they're mad at DOGE, they're mad at us for not screaming at the president, or they're saying, you got to support the president, we got to make sure this is working. And then with that it comes either, let's continue to reduce the executive branch of government, let's get that down where it's got to get. And then the other piece on this that they'll talk about a little bit is tariffs. And they're concerned about tariffs and where it's going and what it's going to do with regard to retaliation from other countries. So our message number one is if somebody has been impacted with DOGE, give us a call, because we've had really good luck in being able to cut back through it and find out whether or not any changes here, whether it's to a farm program, a health program, anything along that line. We've had pretty good luck in getting back through and making sure or reaffirming whether somebody should have been terminated or if it was done by accident. And if it was, what the other alternatives might be in that same office, because other people might have taken an early retirement. We've had good luck with regard to that.
And then if someone is clearly frustrated, an agency or nonprofit or individual concerned with federal spending cuts or concerned with tariffs, if their frustration is palpable and clear, what's your message? If they're reaching out or if they're just out in South Dakota concerned, what's your message to them?
First, the first one is most people agree that the federal government is way too big. And then after that, it's a matter of, have they treated you appropriately with regard to how have they reached out? How has the federal government reached out? And I got to tell you, a lot of the messages that's come out of DOGE or out of the different agencies has been pretty raw and really not very nice in terms of saying, you're done or we don't need you anymore. Very inappropriate in terms of the way that they've shown some disrespect for a lot of our either people that are operating through grants or people that are operating have been good employees for years. So we try to respond and go back and say, let's make sure, number one, that there hasn't been a mistake made. And then, and we've actually gone through, we had about 40-some hundred contacts based on DOGE, but we've gotten it down to under 500 where they were specific within South Dakota, and about $20 million in impact to either grants, office closings, contracts, and so forth. And then we've tried to work that back down to, has it been NIH? To where it's health-related, life and health-related, versus Farm Service Agency programs where they've attempted to shut down contracts on office buildings where maybe one employee was there. And our message back to the Farm Service Agency group and also to the folks that were doing this is, so you're saying since there was only one employee in that particular office, it should be shut down, or does that mean that you're expecting them to have more employees hired? Or what's the logic on this? And once they go back and look at it, we've had pretty good luck in getting people reinstated. Some of the probationary employees, we find out really weren't probationary. They were people that were promoted, and from the date of their promotion, it looked like they were a new hire. They weren't, they'd been there for 20 years. And we've been successful in getting a number of those reinstated fairly quickly as well. But case by case, we're just simply working through it, doing what we should be doing in terms of constituent outreach.
Makes sense. Are you running for re-election to the U.S. Senate?
I've done my best to always try to keep those campaigns as short as possible. So as long as I'm working strictly as a member of the United States Senate, I seem to get more work done, because once we announce for re-election, then we're treated more as a candidate than we are as somebody who's actually trying to just get in and get the job done. And I've also found out that if you just do your job and continue to do your job, people seem to appreciate that, and rather than if you're out trying to seek votes. So I'll wait a little bit before I make a formal announcement.
Are you considering a run for the governor's office?
I am not. I looked at it. I seriously looked at that because honesty, look, it's the greatest job in the world. You can really get things done working as a governor. But right now, the frustration with most people is with the federal department or with the federal government. And this is a time in which right now I'm on some committees that have really got an opportunity to make a difference. I'm on the Armed Services Committee. I do the Cyber Subcommittee. I'm working with artificial intelligence across the aisle, both Republicans and Democrats. And these are areas that are going to impact the quality of life for people in South Dakota for decades to come. When you start integrating healthcare with artificial intelligence, when you start integrating agriculture with artificial intelligence, and you look at the security issues that you've got to be aware with both Russia and with China, and you incorporate artificial intelligence into those discussions, this is literally going to impact our lives on a daily basis for decades to come. The next generation coming up, what they're going to see in their lifetime is based upon our ability to keep the standards for artificial intelligence being developed in the United States rather than in China or someplace else.
Any plans for a public town hall in the near future, Senator? You spoke about hearing from constituents.
Yeah, normally what I try to do are coffees, and I do them pretty informally, but I really don't look at town halls. And part of it, a lot of the town halls have been organized by our Democrat Party here in South Dakota. And a lot of it's been just so that they can express or do their demonstrations. Demonstrations are fine, but it doesn't mean that I have to advertise them. And so if they want to do town halls, fine. I'm going to continue to try to meet constituents basically on a more informal basis, but I think I get more results that way.
I asked your colleague in the Senate, John Thune, this the other day, and it was a comment from Lisa Murkowski that caught my attention. I believe it was last week, but it was certainly in the last few days. She said, quote, "I'm oftentimes very anxious myself about using my voice because retaliation is real," close quote. Do you fear retaliation from the White House, Senator, if you speak out against the MAGA agenda?
It's not so much retaliation, it's a matter of how is your working relationship with the White House. I find I get a lot more done if I work behind the scenes rather than going public. The president has always had the attitude that if you attack him publicly, he's going to respond the same way, publicly. But if you go behind the scenes, you make contact with him, you seem to get good results. And that's what we've tried to do. We've done that within the Department of Defense, working through issues within the Pentagon. We've also found that working in terms of banking issues, working through our committee on banking, working behind the scenes has been more successful. Also with personnel matters, we find that working behind the scenes has been a lot easier, particularly when we disagree with something that they've done, rather than being adversarial in nature. So for me, it's not so much fearing retaliation as it is, how do I get results? And I think we get better results if we do it quietly behind the scenes. And this is one thing. I've had some folks that say, well, why aren't you and John yelling and screaming more? I'm not sure that that's our job. I think our job is to try to get results for people in South Dakota. And in a lot of cases, what people are mad about are things that really need to be done. One of them is the executive branch of government needs to be reduced. There's no question. This is the first time we've had a president who actually said, I want to reduce the size of government. Now, I think when he invited Elon in to do it, I think he was expecting more of a scalpel approach than the sledgehammer he got. But nonetheless, they have been working with us, and behind the scenes, they have been helping us to fix those areas that were broken, that should not have been broken. We got more work to do, most certainly, but it's a huge undertaking to try to reduce the executive branch of government. And in particular, just as an example, the Department of Education. For me, this is an opportunity to actually bring education decisions back into the state and local units of government without reducing the funding. I've talked to a lot of people back here that have said, hey, why are you mad at education? And I'm not mad at education. But what I do want to do is take those really special programs, those offices, special education, IDEA, impact aid, school funding for the school for the deaf, the visually impaired, Native American schools and so forth. All of the money that was in there stays in those offices, but we take the office and the money and move it back where it was before the Department of Education was created in the first place. Take the remaining dollars that aren't specific to an office, put those into block grants, and send them back to the states. That's $268 billion a year, about $16,000 per student that they spend. we'd much rather have that money come back to the states and allow the vast majority of that, specifically to allow the states and local units of government more of a say, fewer strings attached. Not taking any money away from the states, not taking any money away from those offices that would be transferred out of the Department of Education that are special needs, IDEA and so forth. That all stays right with those offices, goes back in for those needs that Congress has already authorized and appropriated for.
That makes sense. I want to be respectful of your time.
Yeah.
There's one other question I wanted to get in. It's been huge concern from a lot of different perspectives across the country. What do you think should happen with regard to Kilmar, Brago, Garcia in El Salvador?
I think you have two different questions. The first part is, what about him specifically? It does not appear, I do not know that according to what the courts have said, and this is where this is going to go, the courts have to be obeyed. We're right in the middle of that discussion right now. We have to follow the law. The courts will determine what the law is. As the courts determine what the law says, I expect that everybody will follow the law. With regard to these individuals that are here in our country illegally, let's work them through this process. The vast majority of them are going to be deported. At that stage of the game, we can begin a legal process for allowing legal immigration to once again presume in the United States. We are a nation of immigrants. Compassion is important, but we are a nation of laws as well. And that applies both ways. With regard to our executive branch and Congress, both have to follow the law.